What's up, gamers? Welcome in. Today we're doing another tier list, this time on operators. This has been highly requested. I've been trying to wait for operator changes and patch to come in for the new season, but it hasn't. So take this list with a grain of salt because some things may change. And do remember, this is also just my opinion. I'm going to do it similar to the one I did last time. This was about 4 to 5 months ago. I'm going to start with the tier list for trio play and then also solo play. Let me know what you guys think about this. And if you guys agree or disagree with me, put it in the comments below. Let's get into it. So this is to start with trios. I'm going to break down where I think these agents fall, how they compare to how they were previously, and how I view them personally. I always like starting these things off with, I think Delta does a pretty good job. I won't say great now because I do think there is some issues with the current meta, but I think they do a good job of balancing most operators in this game. And I always like to say that you can kind of make anything work. Every operator can be good in their own way. They're S tier in very specific situations, but again, I'm going to try to pair them where I think they're S tier in like most situations, or how they play offensively, defensively, overall, how are they? Because some of these really struggle in certain areas and some do really good in others. To start with Hatclaw, this is going to be a change from the last episode for sure. Hatclaw's received some buffs since the previous video I made, and I think she's a lot stronger now. Flashes go off a lot sooner. It seems like they're harder to hit. Her ult now has 4 scans instead of 2 as well. So I'm going to be putting her in A tier for now. I don't remember what I had her in the last one. I want to say it was C or D for trios. Yeah, in fighting, she offers a lot more to the team. I think that the Flash just honestly can own in a lot of situations now. It definitely feels like the best Flash in the game. Feels more consistent than Flashlights and Nox's Flash for sure. So Hatclaw fighting with Flash is really strong, and the ult gets just way more value. You can clear a lot more, and you have a much better understanding of where the team you're fighting can be with the lines, but also because you have the extra scans, you can even look for other teams while fighting another, looking for a third party, that sort of thing. Hatclaw's definitely an A tier agent now. Luna, my girl, she ain't going anywhere. You guys already know it. Luna, I still think is probably the overall best op in the game. If you get comfortable with this operator, I think that you're good everywhere when it comes to playing offensively or defensively, being able to dish out damage and give info for your team. Yeah, there's really no op like her. She's received some nerfs over time, but nothing's ever been major. I still think she probably needs a little adjustment. She's still a little strong, but also it feels manageable. The recon dart, I think with the changes that have happened to it, it doesn't feel as strong, and you definitely have to be smarter when to use it and understand when you can get a pulse and when you can't. You know, it's one of those operators that most players can pick it up and get value out of it, but for it to be an S tier agent, you really have to get good with it. You have to get comfortable with the cook time on A's. You have to get comfortable with, you know, the geometry, the shock darts and bouncing, and, you know, even just the recon dart timing and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's pretty hard to not put Luna as S tier, as she's good on every map as well. You know, always gets that value. Nox is an interesting one, I think, because of how other operators have been introduced this season, which we'll be going into shortly, and the buff of Hatclaw. I think Nox has fallen a bit more. I'm going to put him in D tier. I think comparatively to other assault operators, he's pretty no good. I think most assault operators are better than him. I also think as a rat type of play or solar play style similar to Hatclaw was good, but as I mentioned previously, I think Hatclaw gets way more value with their flash now, gets way more value with her passive, and is just kind of like a better rat character than Nox. Nox really only feels like is getting a lot of value with their ultimate, whereas Hatclaw gets a lot more with all the other abilities. Now, again, guys, Nox can be S tier. There's some plays you can only make with Nox, and there's been times I've been shit on by Nox. Nox ult is still extremely oppressive, but again, when you're on the back foot, when you're playing defensively, or if you're a solo, it doesn't feel like he's that great unless you just get a perfect flank off or use his ult to escape and things like that. In 3v3 situations, I don't see Nox getting more value than all these other agents that I'm going to put above him. Here's the one everyone wants to know about, and kind of the, I don't know, I'd say difficult times of the season. Raptor on introduction, I think, has been extremely OP. I don't like the way he's been balanced. I don't want to make this a whole video just about Raptor. I'm going to, and I will say after more playtime with him and kind of seeing this season shape up a bit more, I'm not going to put him in S tier right now. I'm going to put him at the top of the A tier, but let me tell you why. So Raptor has a lot of issues, and I do think, again, that he's going to be nerfed. So I don't want to put him in S tier because I think it's going to get a little dated. As of now, you could argue he's S tier, but after playing some more of the hard, playing Space City and Prison Hard and just like the upper level of gameplay, I realized that I still don't think he gets as much value in fights a lot of times as Luna does. Now, the reason why I think Raptor is so OP is just because of kind of the interruption he has, and I think the EMP needs some tuning, but more so towards solos. That's where the real issue with Raptor is. He's extremely oppressive to solos and really doesn't allow you to play the game, you know, the way you want to. Raptor can always find you in force fights. So I think like it's an operator that's just way overtuned, and a bunch of adjustments need to be made to his drone and his EMP and his passive even. So I don't think that he'll be this good for long, but even after some nerfs, I could still see him as A tier because there's really no operator that can give you as precise knowledge as Raptor Raptor can. Drone gives you visuals. It also gives you ping to your teammates. Passive can tell you the name of the player and what they're wearing and where they ran to with their footsteps. Like, it's just all way too much information. So there's really nothing like that. You know, Hack Clock can sort of do with their ult, but Luna just gives you, you know, visuals with the dart. But Raptor's kind of his own tier. Again, this is for trios. 3v3s, Raptor is good, but you don't get as much value in firefights, I feel, at the higher level with Raptor. Again, he's still good. Still being able to interrupt all with EMP, I think, is whack. His EMP range is way too big and throwing through walls. Like, it should just be an EMP. It shouldn't be a disarm, and it shouldn't be an interruptive res. Like, I don't like any of that, but I still think there's better picks in 3v3 comps, but he's obviously really, really strong. And I'm just going to place him here for now because, you know, you're going to be looking at this in a couple months, and I guarantee you he's not going to be as strong as he was on release. So yeah, there's the Raptor rant. Moving forward to Shepard. Shepard, I think, hasn't been adjusted much, but I think that he's kind of fallen a bit because of just other operators getting buffed and kind of the meta's changing. We're in a really interesting time right now, I think, with the Tempest change that was made as well, and kind of a lot of people playing around that to deal with cheaters and things like that. So I think Shepard's fallen a bit. He's still really strong. You know, again, it's one of those operators that he's S tier for sure, and like indoor fight, playing in certain buildings, he's extremely good. You know, playing the hallways in Space City and playing in, you know, prison cells, Untied Prisoner, playing in admin, he can get a lot of value. He really stinks everywhere else. You know, if he's outside, he can't get you that much, at least compared to these other operators. So that's why he's going to be put a bit lower. Still really strong, still fun to play. I still think he could even need some nerfs in certain scenarios, but maybe some buffs in some others. I think B tier is a good spot for him. Moving on to Sniva. This is also a really interesting one right now. I'm putting him in D tier as well, but I don't feel great about this because I think he can get value, but we're in a weird spot where I think he's about to get a lot of nerfs because of ongoing stuff with the Chinese client and how they've been playing Sniva on prison and other maps. So he feels pretty weak compared to how he was. I think that, you know, the most value you get from him is just kind of playing in a sneaky rat type of way where you can get a shield bash and guarantee a kill for your teammate, but barbed wire doesn't feel very oppressive. The zip is still really hard to land against good players. Most good teams are going to kind of punish you for Sniva. It's more of an annoyance. It's not that great. Yeah, I don't see much value of him in 3v3 fights where a team is at least understanding how to deal with Sniva. You know, you just shoot the glass, you can util bomb them. They can't move that fast. They can't do a lot. It takes a while to get the suit on and off, or get the shield on and off, I should say. That's why I feel comfortable putting him in D tier for now. Moving forward to Stinger. He's your rock, right? He's never really going to change, is always consistent, but again, he kind of falters based on the meta, and we're in a meta where speed is very important, I'd say. Toxic is really strong, so I'm going to put him in C tier. He's always going to be good, I think. It's one of those operators that's a staple of the game. Smoke wall's always been good. Regular smoke's always been good. Heals and the res passive of being able to bring your full dead teammate back to 100 HP. It's super valuable, but in terms of fighting and consistency, you can't do a lot offensively with him. He's just more of a defensive support, which can be good. But again, I think we're in this time where in the meta where speed is really important, and Stinger a lot of times feels more like, you know, like a burden than in the fight than helpful. A lot of times it's very hard to use smokes offensively, and you know, you're not like sitting there with your heal trying to heal your teammates mid-fight. A lot of times like you're trying to use your gun too. The fast res is really nice. He's really good, but again, I just think comparatively to Toxic right now, he's just not in the same ballpark. I would like to see some Stinger buffs soon because like, he's there, but he's just not good enough to run over Toxic. It's like I don't see many people justifying running Stinger over Toxic consistently in normals and hard modes. Another divisive one this season, Tempest is going straight to S tier. She's really interesting right now because I had this conversation with chat the other day. I think this game is starting to run into the problem of repeat operators on the same trio being an issue, because a lot of people think Tempest is OP and people think that Tempest is annoying to deal with and stuff like that. I counter it by saying I don't think Tempest is OP. I think 3 Tempest is OP. I think 2 Tempest is OP, or that is annoying, right? So I think that's where the real issue lies. I think Tempest is in a pretty good spot where it's balanced. I think it could use a little nerf. I think they went a bit too far with the disarm. The area of effect and the consistency with the disarm seems way too big and way too inconsistent how it works. And the distance with the zip line might be a little too long, but she's basically S tier right now because of her ability to deal with cheaters. Let me make this very clear. Delta has a cheating problem right now. It's bad on hard mode, right? The best way to deal with cheaters is using her disarm to disarm the cheaters because they're shit players, and then you're able to kill them easier. That's why you're running into these double Tempest, triple Tempest metas. It's very annoying when you're playing against a legitimate team in 3v3s and it's just Tempest trades back and forth, but it's kind of like that necessary evil to make it easier to kill cheaters, because we actually have the ability to kill cheaters because we're smarter with utility. If the cheating problem wasn't as prevalent, I wouldn't put Tempest in S tier. I'd probably put her in A tier. That's why she's there. Again, I think we need to start looking at, is repeat agents and repeat operators in a trio worth it in the long run for this game? Because I've said it since the beginning. I'm not just saying this because Tempest is where it's at. You can go back in a VODs a year ago and I'd say this. I don't like that you can play the same operator with your trio. I don't think you should necessarily play like one support, one recon, one assault. I just think it shouldn't be able to play the same character per trio. So I'd like to see that change in the future. And I think that's the main issue you run into with some of these operators, because, you know, a shepherd by itself isn't always that annoying. But if you're playing with against two shepherds, then it can be annoying. You know, Luna by itself, people could say it's annoying. But if you're playing against triple Luna, we got 6 nades and 6 shocks and 3 recons to deal with, that's annoying. That's the issue, I think, with some of the operator balance, where you just get run into that util spam and people play a certain way because they repeat the operators. And that's kind of where Tempest falls in now. But all that aside, Tempest got a big buff. The ult is amazing. You can use it to scout. It goes 80 meters. It lasts a lot longer. It feels like you can get your res off on yourself pretty much anytime you go down, as long as you place yourself in a good spot when you activate the ultimate. Disarm is insane. So much value. The roll is good. Nowhere near as good as Vyron's dash. I don't like fighting with the roll, but it's still a good movement, you know, opportunity to get away from certain things. So yeah, that's why she's there. Really good right now and really fun to play too. I think it's also, I also want to say I put it in S tier because it has a very low floor entry, meaning she's really easy to pick up and be good with, even if you're not very good with her. You know, comparatively, like if you run something like Vyron or Luna, or even like something like Nox, where it's harder to get value until you understand and get a lot of reps with the character. There's a much higher skill ceiling with those characters, but certain characters, instant value. You can instantly pick up and understand what you need to be doing and how you can help your team. You know, that's Hack Claw, that's Tempest, that's Stinger. It's there, and that's why Tempest is up there. Toxic, she hasn't gone anywhere. Still S tier, still amazing. Not much has changed with her, I think, since the last tier list video. Not much to say. She's pretty much, if you're playing like a quote unquote meta comp, certain maps you might want to do something different, but most maps, like, I think you always need a Toxic. Like, Toxic just feels like the must pick for every map, every situation. 2 blinding smokes are insane. The UAV is insane defensively and offensively. The stim always helps people, and then everybody loves her passive of the faster healing and the faster repairs. Can't go wrong with Toxic. Best support hands down. I think we'll probably be seeing, looking at the tier list now, support as the next operator, so I'm really interested to see what they do with that, because we only have 2 supports in the game currently. Toxic has been kind of queen for a while, so yeah, not much to say there. I think everybody loves playing her too. She's that staple operator I think you need to learn and can consistently always get value. Moving on to Yoduru, Uluru, or I don't know how to pronounce that. Everyone gives me different things. I'm going to be putting him in A tier. This is also a big step up from him. He's gotten some buffs since the last one, and I'd say this is more of a annoying operator to deal with, because his mollies are ridiculously strong. I don't think the walls get much value. I don't think his passive gets much value. His rocket, well, I'll just say, is inconsistent. I don't see it getting a lot of value. People tell me it's very good. They get a lot of value with it, but the rocket isn't very punishing to me when I'm dealing with the rocket. It's very easy to shoot, and when I shoot it, I don't feel like it gets me a lot of value. That being said, the mollies carry this guy. Mollies, I feel like you get them back too fast. They spread instantly. They have a huge area. The damage they deal is insane. Like if you stand it for 2 seconds, you're done, you know? In the center of it and you try to run away, you could die or you're gonna be very low. It's very oppressive and hard to deal with. Matched with other operators, going back to Tempest, you're seeing that meta a lot right now. He's probably some of the best delay, if not the best delay in the game right now, just because of how fast you get the mollies back. A lot of people like running the Tempest and then they're zipping back and ulting back. Yuluru's using a lot of utility to delay, being the mollies, the wall, and the rocket. So that's kind of where he's strong. You can isolate people and he can punish people that are hiding. He's very hard to push. If he doesn't want to be pushed, molly is something you don't want to run through in this game. You cannot run through a straight molly when you're on the far side of it going towards the close side of it. It is not fun. So that's why I put him here. I hope to see his rocket be buffed a bit, and also his walls maybe changed and maybe stronger. Maybe they're taller or something like that to actually feel like they're more useful, because I don't see them useful in other scenarios than boosting to get to weird positions and locking doors with walls and stuff like that. More like bug abuse with it, really. But I hope walls and rocket get buffed, and I hope the mollies get nerfed a little bit, because I just think they're way too strong right now. Vyron, my boy, might be one of my favorite operators, if not my favorite operator in the game. This pains me a little bit, but I'm putting him in A tier for now. I think Tempest, I want to keep the S tier again. Like my gun list, I want it to be very clear. These 3 agents, Tempest, Toxic, and Luna, are good on any map in any situation, hands down. You can't say that for these operators. So my S tier is going to be kept short. People are going to be upset. They want this in S tier. They want that. This is the way it is for me. Vyron, I think, has some of the highest skill ceiling in the game and has the most value if you're very good at it. I want to put him in S tier, but I'm not. You know, I think for majority of players, it's very difficult to get insane value value out of him. He hasn't changed much, and kind of Tempest has stepped into that role where she's being picked over Vyron a lot now. But Vyron's still insanely good. The dash is the best movement ability to fight within the game. The C4s are very good zoning and deal a lot of damage, and the knockdown is obviously really strong if you hit it. It's just harder to be, you know, hitting it with. And I think that's why it's like Tempest versus Vyron right now is you have Vyron with the knockdown, it's the ultimate, it takes time to get. You have Tempest with disarm, and you have 2 of them, and it's quicker to get. And they kind of do the same thing. If you hit somebody with a disarm and you're jumping on them, they're dead. They can't do anything. Can't use abilities, can't use their gun. Same thing with the knockdown. The knockdown is just a lot harder to hit. So that's kind of why we're seeing, I think, the shift with the assault meta right now. Again, Vyron's still super good. I think it's a ton of value, especially if you get comfortable with it. He is harder to pick up, but he's super fun to play, and I don't see him really going anywhere. I think he's always going to float around that. Almost like mid-tier. I think he's mid-tier for most players. You know, I could even put him in B-tier. Like, you could argue these operators, all 6 of these are stronger to most players than Vyron, but I do think Vyron gets a little bit of flack. I think if you just play him for a bit and get used to him, he gets immense value as an assault. So that's why I want to keep him in A-tier. Finally, Dewolf. I said I was going to do it. You guys don't believe me? I'm putting him down here, man. I'm putting him down here. Dewolf, I'm a big Dewolf hater. He's okay, but I just think he's mediocre at everything. And I think with the changes to other operators being buffed and him not being adjusted, I think he has fallen down. I will say he's probably the best D-tier operator. I personally would rather have any of these operators on my trio other than Dewolf. I think all these other operators get more value consistently than Dewolf. I'll explain why. Dewolf launchers got nerfed. They're not as strong. You can hear them coming, and I don't think they can go as far as anymore. Don't quote me on that. You can definitely hear them further away now. They're very inconsistent. They don't deal a lot of damage, and they're hard to land. Very hard to get a triple burst launcher and just get a kill. You know, people aren't just going to sit there, tank it, and a lot of times if you are dealing damage, it's not as much as you think. It has to be kind of like right on them. And again, let's compare it to other nade abilities. Yoduru Molly, way easier to hit, way more damage. Luna nade, Shepherd nade, they can be pinpoint accurate, and you can know exactly when they're going to pop. It's just way easier utility to use and more damage. So why would you use Dewolf when you can use those? His ultimate, it's very fun. It's very cool, but again, compared to other ultimates, it's not very good at all. I think if you compare it to almost every other ultimate, he doesn't get as much value. If you get really, really good with him and sliding, and you get good at the movement mechanics with the ultimate, it can be strong for sure, but still, I just don't think it's something that is worth using over all these other operators, specifically assaults. I don't think you can sit here and argue with me in the current meta and try to say that Dewolf is better than Tempest or Vyron. He's kind of like Stinger. He's good, he's there, he's flexible, he's fun to play, he gets value, but there's just much better options. The only redeeming thing I think about Dewolf in the current state of the game is he's an assault operator that can be aggressive, has the slides, has the speed with the ultimate, but he has 2 smokes. You know, that's something that the other assault operators can't say. So he's kind of that flexible agent where you don't necessarily need a toxic if you have a Dewolf, and then you can open up your comp to play something else and you have those smokes, because I think most comps should have smokes, and toxic usually fills that role. Dewolf doesn't do it as well. I don't think he's probably got the weakest smokes in the game, but they still exist. They're still good, and I think that he's flexible for that. And you know, there could be some Dewolf one tricks that are extremely strong out there, and it's good, but again, in the grand scheme of things, I think you're going to consistently find that all these other operators bring more value to your team. So yeah, I think that is the trio section done. Let me know what you guys think. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguing in the comments below, but healthy discussion. Let's move on to solos now. Okay, for solos, this is going to be just based on if you're playing as an individual. People ask me all the time, like, what are the operators I should be playing in solo? If I want to play, you know, this type of style, what should I pick? So I'm going to try to break it down from what I think. I've been playing a lot of Iron Man. If you guys have seen my previous videos on the YouTube channel, I have a solo Iron Man series where I'm trying to progress fully solo, and I've kind of been able to see firsthand, I think, what works and what doesn't, and, you know, a lot of the hard counters to playing solo. I'm going to kind of do this a bit faster. We've kind of gone over previously in the trio section a lot of the benefits of using these operators. A lot of stuff will still apply to solo, but it's just going to change a bit. So without further ado, Queen is solo. I'll say it right now, it's at the very beginning. If you're just trying to figure out what's the best operator to play in solo overall, I'll say it's Hatclaw. She's the queen of solo right now. Again, I went over it before, the buff with Hatclaw made her a lot stronger, but you really need survivability in solo, and that's kind of what Hatclaw offers. The big thing a lot of people might not know about if you're new to the game is that her passive, when crouched, you have much lighter footsteps, much quieter footsteps, and if you're walking while crouched, you're pretty much completely silent. So a lot of times you can sneak up on people without them knowing at all. Also, you're able to kind of escape situations you don't want to be in. Even just crouching without walking, still very hard to hear, and then you can move around the map a lot more silently and swiftly. That's kind of like the main reason I think she's really strong. Now, her knives obviously offer kind of information, and you disable people's abilities, so you can kind of sometimes isolate people from using certain abilities in 1vx situations solo. Obviously, her flashes are really strong, so those can just win you 1v1s and, you know, flash certain people while you can fight others, that sort of thing. You can kind of try to segment fights with Hat Claw. And then her ult is really important because you can kind of determine whether or not you want to take this fight or understand what you're getting into. Oh, there's 2 Raptors and they're all in full red. You know, I don't want to deal with that as a solo player. So ult is really important to identify if there's multiple teams and, you know, the armor types and what types of operators you're dealing with. And that a lot of times with me dictates if I want to take these fights or not. Moving on, Luna. I think that she is also an S tier operator to play. I think that she's a lot harder to pick up solo, but for me, like when I play Leali solo, that's my go-to pick. You know, a map like Leali, you don't get as much value as Hat Claw. Crouching around in the wide open isn't going to do you much good, right? Luna kind of does a similar thing. She's a recon. She can get you that information with the dart. You know what you're dealing with. You can find people, and then the shocks and nades are always good in almost any scenario. So that's why I put her up there. She's a bit harder to play than Hat Claw and to get used to and get comfortable with her abilities, but I'd say as a solo, she may be up there as one of the best fighters. I also love her for the ability to secure yourself sometimes. If you get a kill and you know you're getting pushed, if you have your shock up, a shock is a great way to deter somebody else from pushing you, or, you know, the nade and stuff like that. She gives you the opportunities to reset, whereas Hat Claw doesn't give you that as much. It's pretty much just relying on the flashes, but both the nade and the shock kind of have that option for Luna. All right, moving on. Nox. For solos, I'm not going to put him in D tier. I'm going to put him up there. I'm going to put him B tier for now. I don't want to go too deep into him. I think he's rarely like a specialty pick, and you got to be really comfortable with him. Certain maps, I don't find Nox getting much use other than his ultimate. I don't think his flashes are that good, especially with flashlights and Hat Claw's flash being in the game. It's very hard to get value out of his flashes. And then disc, it's okay, but I just don't think it offers too much. So that's why I'm going to put him here. I basically just say he's like a different type of Hat Claw, a different type of style of Hat Claw, but Hat Claw is just way stronger. Raptor, I'm going to put an A tier again. It's almost funny. It's almost like in the current meta, you can play Raptor to scare other solos, because I think if they're getting Raptored, it's by far, or it's definitely like a duo or trio or something like that. That's kind of where I've seen some solos been having fun with him. Similar to, you know, Hat Claw and Luna is another recon, so you can kind of identify what you're dealing with. Now, the downside to him is that when you're in your drone, you're obviously, you can't use any other abilities. You can't get out of the drone super fast. Like if people are near you, it's kind of risky to be inside of the drone. He does offer that ability to, I'd say, almost like a posture that you are stronger than you are, because if they find out that you're a solo Raptor, your EMP is all you got. You can't do much to play like that offensively or defensively. He's purely an agent where you can get a lot of information. He might be a decent way to counter other Raptors, because you're able to find where people are and, you know, maybe slow people down and try to just keep information on the map, because you can get a lot of information with Raptor right now, and kind of understand where people have pathed based on footsteps or just what you've seen in a drone with spawns and things like that. So that's why I'm gonna put him up there. But when it comes to fighting, you're pretty much relying on that EMP and your gun. You don't have a lot of options. It's more of like a posturing agent as solo. That's what I'd say. Moving on to Shepard. I'm gonna put Shepard in A tier as well right now. I think that, interestingly, you play a lot more solo, I feel like, indoors and on certain maps like Zero Dam, and it's really hard to not get value with Shepard when you're indoors, right? So the traps can always give you notifications of where people are. You can kind of try to keep parts of the map occupied and understand when people can be in certain places based on the trap placement. The quick cook nades are really nice solo, because you can quickly get damage on somebody or prevent somebody from pushing. With Shepard's nade, you can't necessarily do that with Luna, or at least to the same effect. And then his ultimate, interestingly too, is like really good to use offensively but also defensively, but it also gives you information. You know, you can tell how many operators you're hitting and if people are in certain areas. So that's really important too, because sometimes you can just kind of use the ultimate to actually clear space and know if there is any other rats solos around, or if there is a trio hiding in, you know, that area. And Shepard gets a bit underrated. Again, it depends a lot on the map you play. I rated him higher because I do think most of the time solo you play a lot more ratty and indoors, and Shepard kind of plays to that way. You don't want to be out in the open, I don't think, much as a solo, and Shepard already sucks at that. So again, just stick to indoors if you're going to play him. D tier immediately. Not even going to go into it. Your only value with this guy is when you have the shield out. So if you have your shield out, you can't kill anything as a solo. Why do you play him? Moving on. Stinger. I'm gonna put Stinger's S tier. You know, this is a comfort pick for a lot of people solo. I think that he's kind of one of those operators that you can use budget super strong in solo and escape a lot of situations and move around the map really fast. The smoke smoke wall just really carries this guy, and his heal gun makes you able to not have to bring pains or other meds, and you can kind of heal yourself with them. So like this is kind of like the OG King Solo operator, you know, being able to heal yourself on the fly and smoke around to get away from certain places or get to other places. Kind of self-explanatory, really easy to play and pick up. Always is going to be strong solo. He's not going anywhere. Tempest is an interesting one right now. I haven't explored it too much solo, but I'm going to put her A tier for now. I think that she also has that ability to kind of posture like Raptor. A lot of times you won't expect a solo player to be Tempest, but you kind of have that second life opportunity. If they don't know that you're a solo, you might be able to ult and push a team, get one or two, try to get one, and then you go back and res yourself, and now you might have a 1v2 if you've done enough to delay them from getting that res. You know, that's a huge benefit of Tempest. But I've said previously about Tempest, you know, she's not that great on the back foot though, so if they do find out you're solo, you may be in trouble. You kind of have to just rely on, you know, the evasiveness with her, the roll, and then trying to hit disarms. Again, I think she's kind of a bit of a posturing operator, and you know, if you are, I think there's certain areas you can play around the map where if you put a lot of walls between yourself and the enemy and you kind of make it a maze, figure out where you ulted from, you could potentially get a lot of lives with Tempest. You know, it's kind of the only operator that can self-res, so it kind of works as a solo in a way. I'm gonna put her kind of near the bottom of A tier right now. You have to be really confident in fighting. You got to want to fight with Tempest. You're not going to get much value with her as a solo unless you're willing to kind of play more aggressively and fight. But it's also something too where you could use her ult to try to safely loot things, you know. So like say you want to try to get both flight cases but you're scared, maybe you ult from inside the extract. You might be able to run and get a flight case and then zip back, but again, you kind of, you know, you give yourself away there. You might be able to loot things, but if you're using your ult to loot with, it's gonna be really hard to fight with and show that you're, you know, not posturing, you're just a solo. Toxic, I'm gonna put in B tier. You know, I think a lot of people like playing her solo. I tried it and I just honestly found that like it's really hard to play her aggressively. And I mean, again, this kind of is just like a play style thing. I think that she's strong, but it just doesn't feel like a lot of times people, once they figure out you're solo, they're not as scared of you pushing with the UAV. I found that out a lot. People not like try to instantly remove it or try to run away. They try to challenge a lot of times. I feel like toxics that are solo, the blinding gas can, you know, only do so much sometimes. I definitely think she's better than Nox. These other operators, I would kind of feel like picking over toxic in most situations. You know, if I know I'm gonna play a certain way indoors, then I would want to play Shepherd. You know, if I want to play aggressive and try to push for fights, I'm gonna want to play Tempest. If I want, you know, recon and play slower and get more information, I'm gonna play one of these agents. So, and then I just think Stinger gets more value because of the smokes are way more effective to move around both offensively and defensively and being able to heal yourself. The big thing with toxic obviously is being able to have those faster heals and the faster repairing, which can be very helpful for solo. A lot of times I'd rather almost have more utility to deal with people to delay them to get my meds off rather than just have that passive, because other than, you know, once you dump that UAV in the smoke, you don't have a lot to delay, and people will delay some people. But again, I think once they're solo, I found that people will just jump through smokes because they know you're solo. They don't care. They'll trade it, or they'll try to jump through with a bunch of utility and, you know, prevent you from getting a heal or pair off or that sort of thing. I think it's better to have actual damaging utility to delay as a solo than just blinding smoke. Moving on, Uluru, putting in C tier. Not much to say. Again, I think his molly's the only thing that's strong. So unless you want to play a certain way with the mollies, play a certain position, you can maybe try to like trap people and get kills with it. I don't see the walls doing much solo, and the rocket, other than like getting information with it, I think if you're in the rocket, you're already in trouble as a solo player. So I would not say he's very strong solo. Vyron, this is gonna just straight up be if you're comfortable with him and like fighting. You know, for me, I play him a lot on my solo Iron Man. Like I would say he's almost S tier. If you're comfortable fighting with the dash reset is super nice. You can just multi-kill with people doing that and stuff. But for most players, I'm actually gonna put him as B tier as a solo. I think almost all these other operators solo make more sense for most players. Again, when I go play Vyron, I already have I have probably 1,000 hours on him. You know, I know kind of where I want to go and how I can fight and play around him. I think the C4s offer good delay, the dash reset on kill super nice, and the knockdown potential is also really good. And it's one of those things where people feel very comfortable pushing a solo in 3v1 situations, and a lot of times you can catch people off with Vyron. You can dash and try to get that first one before they're aware. They're not going to expect the solo to go aggressive on the trio, right? It's usually the other way around. So I think Vyron kind of, you can wiggle your way into those opportunities to where you can kind of abuse people's confidence. So that's kind of why why I like him. As for kit wise for solo, he doesn't make as much sense as a lot of these other operators. So finally, I'm not going to do Dewolf that dirty. I know people are going to be upset with how I rated Dewolf and the trio part of it, but for solos, if you think about it, he's kind of like I said before, he's kind of that one-man army type of kit. You know, he has the ultimate to play aggressive in the slide or potentially get away with as a solo with the speed. You have the smokes, which are obviously always strong as a solo, and then the nades can also be decent delay. I'm not going to put him as S tier. I think I had him in S tier the previous one, but I will put him in A tier. He's kind of your consistent player that can kind of do everything, but just he doesn't do anything that well. He's just kind of like a baseline operator that can kind of do it all. Damage, delay, and speed is what I'd say. So I think this is where I'd kind of shape it up for a solo tier list. Let me know what you guys think, you know, of both of these. Again, if you guys have any other suggestions for other types of guides or tier lists or videos that you guys want to see other than Iron Man, because I know you guys love that, please let me know in the comments below. Keep uploading Iron Man every Thursdays. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for other guide or informational content. So please let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.